Hi guys, I hope that you're having an amazing day. I am really excited to do this video today. I have a lot of tattoos on me, and until I started to prepare for this video, I actually didn't know how many I had, but I have 65. And people ask me all the time about my tattoos and what they mean and the stories behind them. And a few weeks ago, I received an email from someone asking me that question, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to do something a little bit different than we usually do and to go on a little ride through my tattoo journey and the stories behind them. A lot of these tattoos were done outside of the United States while I was traveling, and they all have really good stories to them. So come with me on this ride, and I hope you enjoy. So let's hop on in and get started with my left arm. This first piece is a paisley mandala. My friend and my tattoo artist designed this one for me after my husband passed away. I went to him and gave him an idea and some samples of what I was looking for, and then he designed the whole thing, and I think he did a really, really great job. I absolutely love the colors in this one. This piece is about 11 years old, and it's one of the only tattoos that I have where I only had to do it once and didn't have to go over it again due to fading. In the photos, you could see his initial drawing, and then after my first session where the line work was done, and then after that healed a few weeks later, he did the final coloring, and that's the final piece. My next piece is the Queen chess piece. I got this one for my boyfriend who is a chess player, and it's filled with some really beautiful hidden little things like the ladybug with the 16 dots for my mom and a beautiful lotus flower down on the bottom. This was done by the same artist who did the mandala that you just saw, and his work was so great that I also never had to get this one redone. I got this about 8 years ago, and the color is still about as bright as it was the day that I got it. This next piece is one that I wanted for a really long time, but I only wanted to get it done in Japan. And the opportunity finally came up about 8 years ago, and I got my beautiful Japanese cherry blossoms at a little underground tattoo shop in Tokyo, which in and of itself was a really cool experience. There are 3 blossoms for my 3 children. My next piece is a beautiful ohm in a flower. I actually saw this design on a piece of jewelry and I fell in love with it, but the jewelry was too big and it wasn't something that I would have worn. So I brought this to my artist and had him design it for me, and I love the way that it came out. This was actually my first openly visible tattoo that I got, and it's on the inside of my wrist. And as you can tell, once I took the plunge on my first visible tattoo, the rest was history. This next tattoo is my most sacred and my most loved piece. If you have seen any of my other videos, then you know that I lost my mom to cancer 24 years ago. When I left for college, she gave me a copy of Green Eggs and Ham, and she wrote a letter for me on the front cover, which you can see here. My artist used her signature to create this piece, and to this day, I love having her writing on me, and it makes me feel very connected to her, and it's a very, very special piece. This next piece I got in South Korea. I don't think that I have ever had an artist draw such straight lines on me. He was an absolute perfectionist, and the studio was immaculate. There was very calm and peaceful music playing, and I'll never forget that he made me one of the most delicious cups of tea that I had ever had in my life. It was a very, very different experience than any of the other tattoos that I've ever gotten. This next piece I got after my mother-in-law passed away. She used to wear an ankh necklace, and it reminded me of her. To me, this represents her beautiful life, love, and loyalty, along with my spiritual growth and a calm and peaceful mind. This is just a group of little baby tats. The top left one is Ohana, which means family in Hawaiian. My sister-in-law and I got this piece and the ladybug that you see below it at the same time to match each other. And a few years later, my daughter also got Ohana on her for her very first tattoo. On the top right is a ladybug with angel wings. I got this piece done by a brand new apprentice who was working at my friend's shop. She was just learning how to tattoo, and I gave her a little spot on my arm to play with, and this is what she came up with. On the bottom right is the Capricorn and the Cancer signs intertwined. I'm a Capricorn, if you can't tell, and some of the most important people in my life are all Cancers, including both of my parents, my two older children, and my boyfriend. So I love this tattoo and what it represents. Okay, let's move on to my right arm. This first piece is a peacock feather with an eye in it. It was designed by an artist at the famous Bang Bang Tattoo in New York City. My son was having surgery on his eyes, and so I thought it would be appropriate to get it there in New York City where the surgery was. And I had this done the day before his surgery. He likes to call this his tattoo. To us, it represents his new eyes, his new life, and the journey that we took to get us there. And a fun fact is this piece was actually supposed to be a lot smaller than it is. And when I arrived at the studio, the artist saw my other work because we had been communicating through email and through text. So this was the first time that she saw me in person. And when she saw my other work, she asked me if she could play around with it and make it bigger and incorporate it into my other pieces. And she had a great reputation, and her studio has a great reputation. So I basically told her to do whatever she wanted to do. And the tattoo came out absolutely amazing. It is a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And you can't see this in the picture, but it actually wraps around my arm, and it's really beautiful. I once saw a piece of art that had a Buddha inside of an Om, and I fell in love with it. And I told my artist about it, and he designed this piece for me. This was the second visible tattoo that I ever got, and it's on the opposite inside of my wrist to my other Om. And fun fact about this tattoo is I have had this piece recolored 4 times, and it still keeps fading, and I have to redo it probably every 2 to 3 years. But I love it and it's worth it. And when the color is fresh on there, it looks so beautiful. My best friend drew this one for me for my birthday when we were on vacation with our families in St. Thomas. I loved this, and it had a perfect space right on my arm, so I made it permanent. A couple of years later, I covered up the bird in the middle with a ladybug, and now it's perfect. This next piece was done in Shanghai, China. The artist was the cutest little woman that I had ever seen, and she was so, so careful not to hurt me. I know that the piece is really small, but I barely felt her working on me at all. The symbol is the year of the rat, which is my Chinese birth year and represents beginnings, wealth, vitality, and wisdom. Here are a few more small pieces. The top left is a British pound that was done in London. This is the only tattoo that I ever got where I was actually sitting in the chair, looking down at the artist working and knowing that I was going to have to get this fixed when I went home. His line work was terrible, like zero. He could not draw a straight line at all. The photo that you see there is after I came back home and had another artist clean it up, and he did a pretty good job with what he had to work with. The bottom left says strength in Tibetan, and I got this for myself as a birthday gift after my husband passed away. The top right is an enso, which represents enlightenment. And inside the enso is a little white Buddha that I got from an artist who was testing out a new white ink. And this was done at Miami Tattoo Company on Miami Beach and was filmed by the TV show Deco Drive for an episode that they were doing on tattoos, which was pretty cool. The bottom right is my two older kids' birthday. They're twins, if you didn't know that. And it's done in Roman numerals. And I actually got this done at a little hole in the wall studio in Rome. Next up are some little hand and finger tattoos. This piece I got at a studio in Honolulu. My best friend and I had the opportunity of a lifetime to go together for a week, and we wanted to get matching tattoos. We both got the plumeria flower, and mine is on my finger and hers is on her wrist. I have let it be on the inside of one of my fingers on my left hand. And on my right hand, I have the plumeria from the tattoo I just showed you in Hawaii, as well as chess and a heart on one of my fingers. Right above my thumb, I have a shamrock that I got done in Dublin, Ireland. And this shamrock actually has a very funny story because the artist did not want to tattoo me in a visible place. And he kept telling me that people wouldn't want to do business with me if I had a visible tattoo. So I had to actually convince him that I owned my own business and that it was okay for him to tattoo me. And even though he still wasn't thrilled about it, he agreed. And that was the first and the only time that something like that ever happened to me when I was going to get tattooed. All right, let's talk about my feet because there are some really interesting ones in here. This first piece I got in Sydney, Australia. I knew that I wanted to get a tattoo from Australia, but I had no idea what I wanted to get. While we were there, we visited the Sydney Botanical Garden, which was absolutely beautiful, and the flowers that were in there were so beautiful. So I decided to get a couple of flowers. One of them is Sturt's Desert Rose from the Northern Territory of Australia, and one is the Cooktown Orchid from New South Wales. There were a few spots on the side of my foot and my toe that hurt like a bitch, but I'm very, very happy that I went through with it. This was actually the first time that I had ever been tattooed by a female artist, and that was pretty cool for me. This next piece was done in Auckland, New Zealand. We were in a Maori museum, and I saw the Manaya piece that you see up on the top left, and I fell in love with it and what it stood for. So I went to a very, very creative artist whose work I loved and showed him the piece and asked him if he could design one of them for me, but like with his own flair. And as you could see, they're the same, but they're different. I love this guy's belly, and it's something that I was really excited about that day. And every time I look at it, I just want to rub the belly. And fun fact about New Zealand and tattoos, I don't know if this is still the case or not, but when we were there, there was no minimum age to get tattooed. So when I was in the studio getting my foot done, there was a boy in the shop who must have been 10 or 11 years old maximum, and he was completely covered in tattoos. And my kids were with me and they were freaking out because they wanted to get tattoos, and obviously that wasn't happening, but I thought that that was really interesting. This next one was a really unique experience. You can tell by the look on my face, though, that it was not a fun tattoo to actually get. I wanted a traditional Hawaiian hand tap tattoo, and I was referred to this artist who was one of the only artists in Hawaii that still uses this method. And when I got to the studio that night, National Geographic happened to be there filming a documentary on different tattoo methods, and they filmed my entire tattoo. The way that it works is the artist interviews you and feels your energy before agreeing to tattoo you. After they do that, the rest is ritual. So every tattoo is different and meant specifically for the person receiving it. And this is what they do. They started by laying a blanket down on the floor, placing all of the tools on the blanket, and then blessing the tools. And then they had me sit down on the blanket, and each of us drank a cup of kawa, which is made from the kava root. And then the artist and his assistant did a walking chant around the blanket and then sat down with me. One more blessing on the instrument, one blessing on my foot, which is where I was getting the tattoo, and then they finally started. And I would say that that whole first process was at least an hour long. And then the assistant would hold my skin very tight while the artist would tap away. It was very painful and it took a very long time. Each line and each symbol represents something. Mine represents a rebirth journey and my love of water. This piece is extremely meaningful to me and I will always cherish it. These are the rest of my foot pieces. The first one is a big heart with 16 little hearts across my foot and my toe. And there's also a little anklet with a horseshoe and a heart. My sister and I both got exactly the same pieces done for our mom. There's actually on the other side that you can't see a cancer ribbon that was also part of that I think you can see in one of the other pictures. The next photo is a bluebird that I got for my mama because she loved them. And then there's a small little piece with my initials in it. And in the third picture is the cancer ribbon I was telling you about, my kids' initials, and a heart with angel wings. This nasty little piece right here is the only tattoo that I ever regretted getting, and I regretted getting it within 24 hours. A drunken night at the Hard Rock with my girls resulted in all of us getting terrible drunk tattoos, and we all hated them. After about 5 years or so, I decided to get it removed, and I had four very painful laser sessions and spent about $600. And what you see in that picture is what it still looks like. It's definitely a lot lighter, but not light enough to cover. But I'm giving up for now. I might try that again at some point in the future. This slide is just a really good photo of both of my feet so that you can see all of that work together. All right, let's talk about my back. It took 6 8-hour sessions, so almost 50 hours to do this piece. And every time the artist was on my spine, I felt pain running down my entire body. But let's talk about love. I had this piece done in the very early part of my spiritual journey, and I absolutely love everything about it. The lotus flower down at the bottom was a cover up of the very first tattoo that I got, which was very ugly and very faded. And he designed this lotus flower, which fit in perfectly with the rest of my back. This next piece was another spiritual experience. It was done at a Buddhist temple about 2 hours outside of Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I sat down with the monk to talk to him for about 30 minutes. And at the end of the 30 minutes, he agreed to tattoo me. The tattoo is called a sakyant, and it is done with another tapping tool, kind of like what was done with the Hawaiian one, but it's much, much thinner and it's much, much faster. And it doesn't hurt nearly as much. Supposedly, the monk incorporates magical blessings into the design. And when he's done, he blesses you and he blesses the tattoo with holy water. It was actually a really beautiful experience. Fun fact, the same monk who did my piece also did a sakyant for Angelina Jolie. And another fun fact is that even though this piece was done by a monk inside of a Buddhist temple, it was actually one of the most expensive tattoos that I have ever gotten. My last tattoo is an unalome, which represents your path to freedom, spiritual awakening, and enlightenment. The bottom part represents the beginning of your awakening, which is actually where I was when I got this piece done. And then in the middle, you work your way up through life's twists and turns
and obstacles and doubt, and then to the straight line of clarity, alignment, and connection, which is, thank God, where I actually feel like I am now. And then the dots at the top represent enlightenment. To me, the unalome is beautifully symbolic of the journey that I've been on and the journey that most of us are on.
I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. As you can see, I can't stop smiling. It's really interesting because I have so many tattoos that I actually forget about some of them, and this was really fun for me, and I hope that you liked it as well. If you have some cool ink and some cool ink stories, please put them in the comments for me below. I would love to see your work and I would love to hear your stories. And if you like the content that I have been putting out, please like my video and please subscribe to my channel. That would mean a lot to me. I hope that you have a beautiful day and I hope to connect with you soon. Goodbye.